Before we embark on this thrilling journey of resilience, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of our inspiring stories that could change your perspective on life. The story you are about to hear will show you that it's never too late to rewrite your own destiny. Catherine Morrison nervously adjusted the black dress she had bought during last week's sale. It was elegant yet understated, just like Nathan liked it, or rather, how he demanded it. Her trembling fingers struggled with the clasp of her pearl necklace, the only piece of valuable jewelry she owned, a gift from her father many years ago. "Catherine, we're late, again!" Nathan Harrison's voice echoed through the mansion, cold as the marble that lined the entrance hall. "And that dress? I've told you I don't like it when you wear black. You look like you're in mourning." She swallowed hard, feeling the familiar knot in her throat. "Sorry, Nathan."
"I thought you approved when I showed it to you?" "Approved? When did that happen? Do you think I have time to approve your mediocre choices?" Nathan strode into the room, imposing in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. His blue eyes, which had once captivated her, now scrutinized her like an evaluator assessing a flawed item. "Anyway, we don't have time for you to change. Just try not to embarrass the family tonight. It's the least you can do." Catherine nodded, lowering her gaze to her hands that hid a secret no one in that mansion knew. The driver took them to the luxurious hotel where yet another event of New York's high society was taking place. The Harrison Foundation was hosting its annual charity ball, gathering the city's financial and social elite. Catherine knew exactly how the night would unfold. It always followed the same script. "Remember," Nathan whispered as they entered the glittering ballroom, "smile politely, don't talk about politics. Don't mention your family background, and please, don't make me explain your awkward comments like I did at the Vanderbilt dinner." "Yes, Nathan," she replied mechanically. The ballroom was a spectacle of opulence. Crystal chandeliers reflected light like liquid diamonds over the guests in their evening attire. Catherine discreetly greeted a few people, always careful not to say too much, to not be too much, to not be herself. "Nathan, darling," Patricia Harrison, her mother-in-law, approached with her predatory smile. "You look absolutely stunning." Then, as an almost imperceptible addendum, "Catherine, you are present." "Thank you, Patricia," Catherine replied, maintaining her rehearsed smile. "The event is wonderful." Yes, Patricia dismissed the comment with a wave. "Nathan, come with me. Senator Johnson wants to discuss that issue regarding next quarter's funding. Catherine, dear, your table is 17, as usual." As usual, table 17. Preserve the original language of the text, strategically positioned near the service entrance, away from the spotlight, where the less important guests sat. Where Nathan placed her, showcasing his charity for marrying someone who, in the words he often repeated over their 7 years of marriage, would never meet the Harrison standard. "Catherine, dear, come sit here." An elderly lady with silver hair and kind eyes waved her over. It was Dorothy Winters, widow of a former partner at Harrison Investments. "Catherine, dear, come sit here." An elderly lady with silver hair and kind eyes waved her over. It was Dorothy Winters, widow of a former partner at Harrison Investments. "It's always nice to have pleasant company at this table." Catherine smiled, this time genuinely. Dorothy was one of the few people in that environment who treated her like a human being. "How are things?" Dorothy asked discreetly as the waiter served the appetizer. "As always," Catherine replied, the code they had established over the years for surviving one day at a time. Dorothy nodded understandingly. "You know, when I was younger, I also sat at the table near the kitchen. Gerald wasn't a majority partner yet. Years later, when we became wealthy, I promised myself I would never forget what it's like to be invisible." Catherine looked at the main table, where Nathan was animatedly conversing, gesturing confidently, surrounded by important people. From time to time, he cast a glance in her direction, not out of concern, but to ensure she wasn't making any social mistakes. "One day," Catherine said softly, more to herself than to Dorothy, This invisibility might turn out to be my greatest strength." Dorothy raised an intrigued eyebrow, but Catherine merely smiled enigmatically as she savored her grilled salmon. In her bag, her phone vibrated silently, the one Nathan didn't know she had. A message from Maria, her colleague. "Good luck at the event. Remember, just a few more months." Yes, Catherine thought, watching Nathan raise his glass in a toast in the center of the ballroom. Just a few more months. The medical billing office where Catherine worked was nothing special. Beige walls, gray carpet, half-height cubicles separating employees who rarely spoke to each other. But for Catherine, that ordinary place was an oasis of freedom. "Good morning, Kathy." Maria Alvarez, her only true friend in the city, placed a cup of coffee on her desk. "How was the event last night?" Catherine smiled as she turned on her computer. As always, Table 17, condescending comments, and Nathan showcasing his charity for marrying someone so mediocre. Maria rolled her eyes. That guy deserves an award for most detestable husband of the year, and the rest of his family could compete in the toxic relatives category. "They don't know anything," Catherine replied, opening her drawer and pulling out a thick book on constitutional law. "And that's how it will stay, for now." To the outside world, Catherine Moratham Harrison was just Nathan Harrison's discreet and inadequate wife, heir to the Harrison family fortune. To Nathan and his family, she was an unambitious woman working in a billing office because she lacked the capacity for something better. What no one knew, not even imagined, was that Catherine was about to graduate first in her class from Harvard Law. "Do you have class this afternoon?" Maria asked, and she checked her own tasks for the day. "Yes, Advanced Business Law Seminar." Professor Stevens said he would cover specific cases of corporate fraud. Catherine couldn't help the small smile that formed on her lips. Maria shook her head in admiration. "I don't know how you manage, working 8 hours here, secretly studying at Harvard, and still dealing with that abusive narcissist." I was going to say something worse, but that works. Catherine's secret life had begun 3 years earlier, when Nathan, in yet another episode of humiliation, had mocked her for mentioning her old dream of studying law. "You? At Harvard?" he had laughed during a dinner with friends. Catherine can barely articulate a coherent thought in public. Imagine her arguing in court. That night, something had snapped inside her, not out of sadness, but determination. The next day, Catherine sought information about the entrance exam for Harvard using public library computers. 3 months later, she had been accepted with a full merit scholarship. "I need to stop by the storage unit after work," Catherine commented while organizing her documents. "I have to store my new books and grab my notes for the exam next week." The storage unit was another secret. Rented in her maiden name, Catherine Morrison, it held all the remnants of her academic life: books, papers, certificates. Nathan monitored her finances so closely that she needed a safe place to keep her other life. "Your dad called yesterday," Maria commented quietly. "He said everything is ready for next week." Catherine nodded, feeling a mix of nerves and anticipation. Daniel Morrison, her father, was the only family member who knew about her plan. A brilliant engineer, Daniel had developed cybersecurity software years ago but kept his business small and discreet, or so everyone thought. "Nathan has no idea what's about to happen," Catherine murmured. "He always underestimated my dad, called him a small-town businessman." "Well, that small businessman just sold his company for $57 million, Maria laughed. "And let me guess, Nathan doesn't know that either?" "Not a clue. Dad insisted the sale be discreet. No public announcement, no news in business papers, and most importantly, everything is in my name." At 5 o'clock, Catherine meticulously tidied her desk. At Harrison Investments, Nathan would be in meetings with investors late into the evening, as he was every Wednesday. It was the day she had the most freedom. In the small storage unit in Queens, Catherine took off the formal blazer she wore to work and slipped on a comfortable t-shirt. She sat among neatly stacked piles of books and opened her laptop.
On the screen, a notification blinked. Confirmation, Harvard Law class speaker, Catherine Morrison. Her eyes momentarily welled with tears. For 3 years, she had studied while Nathan slept, during lunch breaks, on weekends when he traveled for business. She had taken online exams, participated in remote seminars, always with carefully crafted excuses for her absences from social events when she needed to be on campus. Just one more week, she whispered to herself, stroking the formal invitation for the graduation ceremony. Just one more week and Table 17 won't be my place anymore. The Harrison Foundation headquarters occupied an entire floor of an Art Deco building in downtown Manhattan. Catherine rarely visited the location. Nathan preferred to keep her away from the serious family matters. But that day, a week before the big annual charity gala, she had been called in for a meeting about the event's final details. "Catherine, dear, I'm so glad you could come," Patricia Harrison said with false cordiality as Catherine entered the meeting room. Her mother-in-law was accompanied by Margaret, Nathan's sister, and a few assistants who worked exclusively to organize the family social events. "Thank you for including me," Catherine replied politely. Patricia smiled like a snake ready to strike. "Well, it's the least we can do, right? After all, you are a Harrison, at least in name." Margaret chuckled discreetly, while the assistants pretended to be busy with their tablets. "We need to finalize the guest list," Patricia continued, ignoring Catherine's evident discomfort. "Nathan mentioned your father wanted to attend?" Catherine nodded. "Yes, he would love to be there. He hasn't attended the events due to work trips, but this time he insisted." Patricia and Margaret exchanged quick glances. "Well," Patricia said slowly, "I'm afraid that won't be possible. This year's gala is exclusively for major donors and strategic partners of the foundation. Your father, well, he doesn't fit into either of those categories, does he?" The humiliation was calculated, as always. Catherine felt her face heat up, but she maintained the neutral expression she had perfected over the years. "I understand," she replied simply. "Don't worry," Margaret interjected with false sympathy. "I'm sure your father will understand. He must be used to not attending circles like ours." Catherine looked at her sister-in-law, so similar to Nathan in arrogance and cruelty, and for the first time in years allowed herself a brief moment of anticipatory satisfaction. "I'm sure he'll understand perfectly." As she left the building, Catherine waited until she was out of sight of the security cameras and pulled out her secret phone. She dialed a number she knew by heart. "Dad, it's Kathy. As expected, they denied your entry to the gala." She paused, listening to the response on the other end. "Yes, everything is going according to plan. Do you have the donation receipt? Great. Judge Brennan confirmed her attendance? Excellent. I think everything is ready then." She put her phone away and walked to the subway station, feeling a strange lightness. For 7 years, she had lived under Nathan and his family's psychological and emotional control. For 7 years, she had been the disappointment, the inadequate, the woman who sat at table 17. But Catherine had used that time. While Nathan openly belittled her, she studied. While the Harrison family excluded her from any important decisions, she planned. And now, finally, her patience would pay off. That night, upon arriving home, she found Nathan in his office working on his laptop. "How was the meeting with my mom?" he asked without looking up. "Productive," Catherine replied. "We finalized some details for the gala." Nathan continued typing for a few seconds, then stopped and looked at her. "I heard your father wanted to attend." Catherine kept her expression impassive. "Yes, he mentioned something like that. But your mother explained that the event is only for major donors and partners." Nathan smiled with that superior expression she knew so well. "It's better this way. Your father would feel completely out of place. What would a small-town tech businessman talk about with people like Senator Johnson or the CEO of Blackstone?" "You're right," Catherine agreed, lowering her gaze as she always did. "I suppose it would be awkward for everyone." Satisfied with her usual submission, Nathan returned to his work. Oh, and don't forget, for the gala, wear the blue dress my mother picked for you. And please do something with your hair. Last time it looked like you just rolled out of bed. Yes, Nathan. And remember your table. 17, Catherine finished. I know. What Nathan didn't know was that for the first time in 7 years, Catherine would not be at table 17. In fact, she would be right in the spotlight. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel sparkled under the golden light of hundreds of candles and crystals. The 500 most influential guests in New York mingled with glasses of $200 champagne, displaying jewelry and equally polished conversations. It was the Harrison Foundation's annual charity gala, the most important social event on the family's calendar. Catherine observed everything from the adjacent room, where special guests waited to make their entrance. Her heart raced, but not from nerves, from anticipation. For the first time, she wore a dress she had chosen, an elegant emerald green number that accentuated her eyes and skin. Her hair was styled in a sophisticated updo, courtesy of a renowned salon that Maria had secretly taken her to that afternoon. You look absolutely stunning, Nathan said as he approached, genuinely surprised. I thought I told you to wear the blue dress my mother chose. I wanted to do something special tonight, Catherine replied with a confidence he had never seen before. After all, it's the most important event of the year for the family, isn't it? Nathan frowned, momentarily thrown off by his wife's subtle change in demeanor. Well, yes, but... He paused, checking his platinum watch. We need to go in now. Remember what we talked about regarding your behavior. Don't worry, Nathan, Catherine replied with an enigmatic smile. Tonight will be unforgettable for everyone. As they crossed the ballroom toward the main table, Catherine noticed the surprised looks from the guests. For the first time, she was not being led to table 17. Nathan, confused by her sudden transformation, had decided to keep her close that night, a strategic mistake he would soon regret. Catherine, Patricia Harrison explained as she saw her approaching the main table. What a surprise to see you here. And that dress isn't what we agreed upon, is it? I thought a little change would be welcome, Catherine replied smoothly. The night promises many surprises. Dinner proceeded with the usual pomp. Speeches about charity and social responsibility were delivered by Nathan and other executives from Harrison Investments. Symbolic checks were handed out to representatives of carefully selected causes, more for the positive exposure they provided than for any real impact. Catherine watched everything with renewed clarity, as if someone was about to wake her from a long nightmare. At 9 o'clock sharp, as Nathan prepared for his final speech, the ballroom doors opened. A man of medium height, with gray hair and an impeccable suit, entered calmly. Few recognized him, but Catherine felt her heart swell with pride. Daniel Morrison, her father, was striding confidently toward the stage. "Who let that man in?" Patricia hissed to one of the security guards. "He's not on the guest list." Nathan, already at the podium, visibly paled upon recognizing his father-in-law. "Security," he discreetly called, "please escort this gentleman out." Before anyone could intervene, Daniel climbed onto the stage with surprising agility for his 60 years. Beside him stood an elegant middle-aged woman in a pristine suit, Judge Elizabeth Brennan, one of the most respected judges in the state of New York. "Good evening, everyone," Daniel said into the microphone, his firm voice echoing through the now silent ballroom. "I apologize for the interruption, but I have an important announcement to make. Many of you do not know me, but I am Daniel Morrison, father of Catherine Morrison Harrison, and apparently unworthy of an invitation to this event." Murmurs rippled through the ballroom. Nathan, pale and visibly uncomfortable, tried to regain control of the situation. "Mr. Morrison, this is not the appropriate time." "On the contrary," Judge Brennan interrupted, taking the microphone. "This is exactly the appropriate time. As a representative of the Justice of the State of New York, I am here to witness and formalize some facts that need to be made public." The silence in the ballroom was absolute. Catherine watched the scene unfold, feeling a strange calm. 7 years of humiliation, psychological and emotional abuse, of being constantly belittled and underestimated were about to end. First, Daniel continued, I would like to announce that my daughter, Catherine Morrison, who many of you know only as Nathan's wife, will be graduating next week as the top student from Harvard Law School with the highest average in the last decade. The ballroom erupted in astonished murmurs. Nathan's eyes widened in shock and disbelief. Secondly, Daniel went on, his voice now stronger, I would like to inform you that I have just sold my company, Morrison Technologies, to an international conglomerate for $57 million. A company that Nathan frequently described as a small suburban business. Patricia Harrison dropped her champagne flute, shattering it on the marble floor. Margaret covered her mouth with her hand, horrified. And third, Daniel concluded, smiling directly at Catherine, all the assets of the company, including a mansion on the Upper East Side and a brand new Mercedes, are registered exclusively in my daughter, Catherine Morrison's name. Judge Brennan took the microphone again. And now, if I may, I have some official documents to hand over to Mr. Nathan Harrison. She gestured to an assistant who approached with a thick folder. Mr. Harrison, these documents were obtained legally through court orders and contain information about your financial activities over the past 5 years. Nathan, now visibly panicking, tried to intervene. This is absurd, an invasion of privacy. I'll sue. I'm afraid you're not in a position to sue anyone, the judge calmly interrupted. These documents prove that you lost over $2 million in failed investments over the last 3 years, maintain undeclared offshore accounts, and committed documented tax fraud on at least 6 distinct occasions. The ballroom, already silent, seemed to freeze. 500 members of New York's elite were witnessing the public collapse of Nathan Harrison's immaculate reputation. There's more, the judge continued. Evidence shows that Mr. Harrison has been having an extramarital affair with Miss Veronica Palmer for over 2 years and was planning to divorce Mrs. Catherine, leaving her without resources based on a prenuptial agreement that is now legally invalid due to the documented financial fraud. Catherine finally stood up. Her eyes met Nathan's, not with anger or triumph, but with a serenity that further disconcerted him. Sorry, Nathan, she said, her voice clear and firm, captured by the microphone her father had handed her. I think I won't need to sit at table 17 tonight. The chaos that followed in the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was both methodical and devastating. Like a house of cards hit by a sudden breeze, the social and financial empire of the Harrisons began to crumble, piece by piece, revelation by revelation. Veronica Palmer, a blonde and elegant woman whom many recognized as Nathan's frequent business associate, stood up from her table near the stage. Her face was pale, but her posture was determined. It's true, she declared, her voice echoing in the silent ballroom. Nathan and I have been together for 2 years. He promised me he would divorce Catherine after he managed to transfer all the assets to his name, and he would give me the family jewels she wears. Patricia Harrison visibly staggered, needing to lean against a chair. Her aristocratic face contorted into a mask of fury and humiliation. Nathan, do something, she hissed at her son, who seemed incapable of reacting, frozen like a statue on stage. As if responding to an invisible script, the side doors of the ballroom opened again. 3 middle-aged men in conservative suits entered, walking determinedly to the center of the ballroom. I'm Robert Chen, former CFO of Harrison Investments, one of them announced. I was fired 3 years ago when I refused to falsify investment reports to cover Nathan's losses. I have all the original documents that prove the Judge Brennan's allegations. And I'm Thomas Weber, another introduced himself. I was responsible for the European division until I was forced to resign when I discovered the illegal offshore accounts. I can testify under oath about all the fraudulent transactions. The third man, older and distinguished looking, stepped forward.
I'm Richard Donovan, Senior Advisor at the bank managing the Harrison family's investments for 3 generations. I'm here to confirm that the information presented is accurate and that our institution is fully cooperating with the authorities in this investigation. One by one, former associates, employees, and business partners that Nathan had discarded over the years seized that moment of vulnerability to present their own evidence against the Harrison family. It was like watching an avalanche in slow motion, inexorable, relentless, and utterly devastating. In the center of this whirlwind, Catherine remained serene. She hadn't planned this part, Veronica's public confession, the appearance of the former employees. That was the universe balancing the scales, years of injustices being corrected in a single night. Nathan, finally regaining the ability to speak, approached her, away from the microphones. "Catherine," he whispered, his face contorted in a mix of anger and pleading. "We can work this out. You don't have to do this. Think of your reputation, your status as a Harrison." Catherine smiled softly. "I think I prefer being a Morrison now, Nathan." She turned to leave, but he grabbed her arm. "You don't understand," he insisted, urgency creeping into his voice. "I can give you anything you want. We can start over. I'll be different, I promise." Before Catherine could respond, Margaret quickly approached, pulling Nathan aside. "We need to contain them now," she hissed. "Mom is contacting our lawyers. We can sue everyone for defamation, invasion of privacy. We'll transfer the remaining assets to the secondary accounts in Cayman and—" "It's no use, Margaret," Patricia interrupted, joining them. Her usually composed expression had given way to bitter resignation. "I just spoke with Stevens. The feds have already frozen all the accounts, and all our friends are discreetly leaving. No one wants to be associated with us now." Margaret looked around and, in horror, realized it was true. The tables around them were quickly emptying. Senators, judges, CEOs, and high society figures who minutes ago had vied for the Harrisons' attention were now finding excuses to leave or simply avoiding looking in their direction. "Where are our Yale friends?" Nathan asked almost childishly. "The club? The Vanderbilts? The Astors?" "They were the first to leave," Catherine said softly. "Loyalty seems to be a scarce commodity when reputation is at stake." As if to confirm her words, a distinguished gray-haired man, the dean of Yale Law School, where Nathan had studied, passed by them on his way to the exit. Their eyes met for a brief moment, but the dean quickly looked away, pretending not to recognize his former star student. Catherine felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. It was her father, accompanied by Judge Brennan. "I think that's enough for today, dear," Daniel said softly. "You've done what you needed to do." Catherine nodded. She was about to follow her father when Nathan called out to her again. His face, always so controlled and arrogant, now revealed an almost pathetic vulnerability. "Why, Catherine?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Why now? Why like this?" Catherine considered the question for a moment. "Because you called me a failure one more time, Nathan. Last week, in front of those investors from Chicago. That was the last straw." "We need to talk privately," Nathan said suddenly, becoming aware of the looks and whispers around them. His face, once pale with shock, was now flushed with desperate determination. "In the library, now." Catherine hesitated, looking at her father and Judge Brennan. "You don't have to go," Daniel murmured, concern evident in his eyes. "It's okay, Dad," Catherine replied with a calmness that surprised even her. "There are things that need to be said, alone." Judge Brennan leaned in discreetly. "Remember, Catherine, you have all your legal rights now," and she slipped something small into Catherine's dress pocket. "This might come in handy." Catherine nodded and followed Nathan through the now partially empty ballroom. Guests were still leaving in haste, avoiding any association with the unfolding scandal. Some journalists were already circulating the edges of the event, capturing images and information that would be on the front pages of New York's major outlets the next morning.
The plaza's private library was a sanctuary of dark wood, old books, and leather armchairs. Nathan closed the doors behind them, ensuring they were completely alone. "You planned all this," he said, not as a question but as a statement. His voice oscillated between reluctant admiration and contained rage. "How long, Catherine? How long did you live this farce?" Catherine looked at the man before her, the man who had controlled every aspect of her life for 7 years, who had belittled her at every turn, who had made her doubt her own worth. He seemed smaller now, less intimidating. "It wasn't a farce, Nathan. It was survival." She walked to one of the windows, watching the lights of Manhattan shining in the night. "Do you remember what you told me on our first anniversary, when I suggested going back to school?" Nathan frowned, confused by the change of subject. "You said I should be grateful to have someone like you, that I would never be able to stand out on my own merit, that my only quality was being presentable enough not to embarrass you completely." She turned to face him. "That night, I realized you would never change, that I was just an accessory in your perfect life." "That's ridiculous," Nathan retorted, pacing like a caged animal. "I gave you everything, a life you could never have on your own, a respected name, a place in society, a seat near the service entrance," Catherine interjected. "A meticulous control over my clothes, my friendships, my words. A bank account you scrutinized penny by penny. Constant humiliations in front of your friends. Is that what you call everything, Nathan?" He stopped, staring at her with an expression Catherine had never seen before, something between disbelief and a painful late understanding. "What do you want?" he finally asked. "Money? Revenge? To destroy everything my family built for generations?" Catherine shook her head slowly. "I don't want anything from you, Nathan. I never did. I just wanted to be respected, to be treated like a human being with inherent worth. But you were never capable of that, were you?" Nathan stepped closer, suddenly calculating. His business mind was already looking for angles, negotiations, possible deals. "We can work this out, Catherine. We're smart people. You proved that today." His tone shifted to something almost seductive. "Think about the potential. With your new degree and my contacts, we could rebuild everything, bigger and better. I recognize your value now. We could be true partners." For a moment, a single, brief moment, Catherine felt the weight of that proposal. What would it be like to finally have Nathan's respect? To be truly accepted in the society that had rejected her so thoroughly? But then she remembered. Table 17, the cruel words, the daily little deaths of her self-esteem. "It's too late, Nathan." His face hardened instantly, the mask of reason falling away to reveal the underlying fury. "You're not going to get away with this," he threatened, moving dangerously close. "You think some accusations and a diploma are going to bring me down? The Harrisons have survived scandals before. We have powerful friends, connections you can't even imagine." "Like the accounts in Liechtenstein?" Catherine asked calmly. "Or the falsified documents from the merger with European Credit last year? Or perhaps the payments to the IRS auditor?" Nathan visibly paled. "How do you talk in your sleep, you know? Especially after those whiskey-laden dinners with your partners. And I listened. I took notes. I researched." Catherine pulled out the small device that Judge Brennan had given her, a digital recorder the size of a flash drive. "And now I'm recording." Nathan froze, staring at the device. "I have no interest in destroying you, Nathan. I just want my freedom. But if you try to harm me or my family—" "You calculating bitch," he exploded, all pretense of civility evaporating. "You think you're clever? 7 years. 7 years I supported you, endured your mediocre family, your boring conversations, your social incompetence. I could have married anyone. Heiresses, models, women who actually mean something." Catherine discreetly activated the recorder, holding it where Nathan could see it, knowing that every word he uttered was being recorded. Like Veronica? She asked softly. The woman you promised the family jewels to? Veronica at least knows her place, he shouted. Not like you, with your ridiculous ambitions. Harvard? You think a diploma will make you important? You'll always be the girl without class I pulled out of the suburbs. Really, Nathan? And what about your frauds? The investors you deceived? The falsified tax returns? Mentioning his illegal activities seemed to ignite him even more, as if the public exposure of his crimes was more unbearable than losing money or status. Everyone does it, he raged. You think anyone reaches the top honestly? Those old hypocrites out there, they all have skeletons in their closets. The difference is they're smart enough not to get caught. Like you were? Catherine provoked, knowing that each furious confession strengthened her position. I wasn't caught. You betrayed me after everything I did for you. Nathan seemed to have completely lost control. That deal with the teacher's pension fund, a masterstroke. They would never have noticed if that nosy accountant hadn't started asking questions. Catherine remained calm, allowing him to continue his involuntary confession. Nathan, in his blind rage, didn't realize that each word was sinking him further. And you know what's even more pathetic? He continued, stepping so close that Catherine could feel his hot breath. You actually believed I loved you, that I saw any value in you beyond your utility as a trophy wife, as a facade of normalcy for the more conservative investors. That should have hurt. 7 years ago, it would have shattered Catherine completely. But now, strangely, she felt only a deep pity for the man before her. I know, Nathan, she replied calmly. I always knew. That's why we're here today. Something in her tranquility seemed to finally penetrate his fury. Nathan stepped back, suddenly aware of what he had confessed, how he had exposed himself. Turn that off, he ordered, pointing at the recorder. When Catherine didn't move, he advanced. Turn it off now! The library door opened abruptly. Daniel Morrison stood there, accompanied by 2 security guards and Judge Brennan. I think we've heard enough, the judge declared, gesturing to the guards who positioned themselves next to Nathan. Mr. Harrison, I strongly suggest you don't say anything more without a lawyer present, and I recommend you find a very good one. Nathan looked around like a cornered animal, suddenly aware of the complete extent of his fall. His eyes landed on Catherine one last time, no longer with anger or threat, but with something close to disbelief. How? He asked, almost in a whisper. How did I not see? Catherine smiled sadly. Because you never really looked at me, Nathan. In 7 years, you never really saw me. 6 months later, the auditorium of Harvard Law School was completely packed. Proud parents, anxious relatives, and solemn professors occupied every available seat, while the graduates in their black robes and square caps awaited the moment to receive their diplomas. At the podium, Catherine Morrison, she had reclaimed her maiden name, adjusted the microphone. As the class speaker, she had the honor of delivering the commencement address. Her eyes scanned the audience, finding her father's proud gaze in the front row. Beside him were Maria, Dorothy Winters, and, surprisingly, Judge Elizabeth Brennan, who had become a mentor and friend in recent months. Distinguished professors, family, friends, and, above all, fellow graduates, Catherine began, her voice clear and confident, echoing through the auditorium. When I was asked to speak about overcoming obstacles as the theme of this address, I couldn't help but smile at the irony. A gentle laugh rippled through the audience. In recent months, Catherine's story had become well known, not for the sordid details of Nathan's crimes, which were still under seal, but for the inspiring journey of a woman who secretly studied law while living under psychological and emotional control. The law teaches us about justice, fairness, and the fundamental belief that every human being has inherent worth. But many of us, especially women, live in worlds where those principles are denied daily. Worlds where we are told we are less, that we should settle for less, that we should sit at table 17 and be grateful to be there. Catherine paused, allowing her words to sink in. Table 17, for those unfamiliar with the reference, was where I sat at every social event of my ex-husband, away from the spotlight near the service entrance where the less important were placed. For years, I accepted that spot, not because I believed I deserved it, but because I was gathering strength, knowledge, and courage to create my own place. She smiled at her classmates. Some of you have faced much greater obstacles than mine. Some came from countries where access to education is denied. Others overcame illness, poverty, discrimination. Each of us carries our own Table 17, that place where the world tried to put us, telling us it was the best we could achieve. Catherine looked up at the grand ceiling of the auditorium, then turned back to the audience. Today, we declare that we refuse Table 17. We refuse the limits imposed by others. We refuse the belief that our worth is determined by anyone other than ourselves. A wave of applause erupted spontaneously. When the silence returned, Catherine concluded, "True overcoming is not just escaping difficult circumstances, it's transforming them into strength, wisdom, and compassion for those who have yet to find their voice. As lawyers, we will have the privilege and responsibility of helping others find their voices. And I promise you, as I promised myself at that table near the service entrance, I will never again allow someone to be silenced if I can do something about it." When Catherine stepped down from the podium, the entire audience was on their feet, applauding, not just for her words, but for the living example of resilience and determination she represented. After the ceremony, as the graduates and families gathered to celebrate, Catherine found herself surrounded by classmates and professors offering congratulations. "Miss Morrison?" A female voice called her discreetly. Catherine turned and found a young woman in her mid-20s holding out a business card. "My name is Rebecca Chen. I'm the executive assistant at Morrison Industries. Your father asked me to deliver this." Catherine accepted the card, surprised to see her own name printed beneath the company logo, Catherine Morrison, CEO. "He said the decision is entirely yours," Rebecca continued. "But the company would be honored to have you at the helm." Later, at the small celebration dinner organized by her father at an exclusive restaurant in Cambridge, Catherine looked around the table. Not Table 17, but a central table, reserved for the most important guests. There were the people who truly mattered. Her father, Maria, Judge Brennan, a few professors who had become mentors, and Rebecca, whom Catherine sensed would become a valuable ally in the years to come. "So," Daniel asked, raising his glass, "what's the next step, CEO Morrison?" Catherine smiled, feeling a freedom that still felt new and surprising. "First, I'll accept that offer to take over the company, but with one condition. We will implement a profit-sharing program for all employees." Daniel nodded approvingly. "And then?" "Then," Catherine paused, looking at Judge Brennan, "I will create a foundation. I'll call it Table 17, a foundation to help women suffering from financial and psychological abuse find independence, education, and, eventually, justice." "Brilliant," the judge commented. "Count me in for the advisory board." "And what about—" Maria left the question hanging, not wanting to mention Nathan directly and spoil the celebration. "Nathan," Catherine completed without hesitation. The name no longer held power over her. "From what I've heard, the Harrison family is facing civil and criminal lawsuits. Patricia and Margaret made a deal with the prosecution to testify against him in exchange for reduced sentences." "I heard he had to sell everything," Daniel remarked. "The mansion, the cars, the properties in Europe. He's working at his uncle's car dealership in New Jersey, living in a one-bedroom apartment." Catherine nodded, unsurprised. "He wrote me a letter a few weeks ago." Everyone at the table suddenly perked up. "What did it say?" Maria asked. Unable to contain her curiosity. "Many things. That Veronica abandoned him as soon as the money ran out. That none of his friends are answering his calls. That he's alone for the first time in his life." Catherine took a sip of champagne before continuing. "And in the end, he asked for a second chance, said he realized his mistakes, that he had changed, that we could start over." And you responded? Judge Brennan asked, with the neutrality of someone who professionally avoids judgment. No, Catherine replied simply. I kept the letter, not as a trophy or out of resentment, but as a reminder. Reminder of what? Rebecca asked timidly. Catherine thought for a moment before answering. That sometimes the best revenge isn't to destroy someone, but to let them live with the consequences of their choices while you become everything that person said you could never be. Daniel raised his glass again to Catherine Morrison, who will never again sit at table 17. To Catherine, everyone echoed in unison, and to table 17. Catherine smiled, toasting with her new family, not by blood or name, but by choice and value. And in that moment, she felt an unexpected gratitude for table 17, the place that had taught her her own strength, the place that had forged her determination, the place from which she had freed herself, but would never forget. Because sometimes you need to sit at table 17 to learn that you deserve the main table. And sometimes you need to be called a failure to discover that you are, in fact, extraordinarily successful. If you enjoyed this story of resilience and transformation, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share it with friends who also appreciate inspiring narratives. Your reactions motivate us to continue bringing stories that touch the heart and show that it's always possible to rewrite our destiny, no matter how difficult the path may seem. Until next time.